Just like that. Hello, friends. Welcome on in. Happy Global Hack Week. Happy last stream from yours truly. Not last stream of Global Hack Week, just last stream from me. That being said, I think we're going to have a fun little time here on this morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you happen to be joining us from. As always, I like to keep my streams relatively exciting, relatively fun, and relatively engaging. So we'll go ahead and leave you all time to ask throughout the stream any questions that you happen to have. Please just go ahead and drop them straight in the chat. I'll do my best to get to answering them as quickly as I can. And we'll go ahead and jump into sharing a little bit of my progress from the last two streams. We'll talk about how this app... hello. We'll talk a little bit about how this app incorporates into how this API incorporates into one of my previous Global Hack Week applications, kind of talk a little bit about best practices, maybe build out some new fun things, and overall have a pretty good time. So let me go ahead and share my screen to start here. And I'm also going to go ahead and... I don't know why, but I think I almost just clicked myself off there. Also go ahead and share a couple of things. The first one will be our check-in link for this event. So if you're coming in and tuning in, make sure you go ahead and check in over on the MLH events page. This just allows for you to get all of those wonderful points and other fun things that you might need throughout the week. You get swag and all sorts of different fun, exciting things just for participating in our Global Hack Weeks. And we love seeing you here, and we love seeing what type of events sort of our community is interested in. So make sure you go ahead and give me some love over on that link right there. There we go. Perfect. There you go. And yeah, so it'll be fun. I think it'll be really fun. And then also, in addition to that, I'm going to go ahead and drop the GitHub link in the chat. I'll leave the events link up for another minute or two, and then I'm going to go ahead and move into the GitHub link. Take some water in the meantime. Water is good for you. But let's go ahead. Perfect. So what we can go ahead and see here is you can go ahead and, my goodness, sorry. Deep breaths. Let's do that again. You can go ahead and check into the events page right here, right? So this is to check in, get points, be an active participant in Global Hack Week. We love seeing you. We love seeing what events you come to. So make sure you do that. If you would like to see our progress from part 1 and part 2, you can go ahead and do that right at that GitHub link right there. Truly. So pretty sweet, simple right there. Cheerify API is our GitHub repository. It's under my GitHub. Which you can also give me a follow, give the repository a star, anything and everything you might need. You're welcome to work on it with me. You're welcome to deploy your own version. You're welcome to kind of do a host of different things. So let's go ahead and take this time to share my screen. Go ahead and share this page with y'all super quickly. So yeah, this is Cheerify API. And so this is what we've been working on for the past 2 live streams. And you can go ahead and integrate positive affirmations into your applications. It has a quick little README, which we'll actually be fixing up a little bit because there's a bunch of different glitches and things. We'll talk about why that's important in a second. And then we've also got within here, it's built out in Flask. So it's a Flask API that has a wide variety of different methods, and we'll look at those in more detail soon as well. It has a list of different affirmations that we've so far hard-coded, and then we also have a list of mock users, which we were starting to slowly work on at the end of part 2 stream. So now let's go ahead and actually show off a little bit Python Anywhere and our actual API call. So right now, when we go and redirect to my Python Anywhere, we actually automatically get a random affirmation. So this is all we need. And when we refresh the page, right, we make calls and retrieve our affirmation with a category, an ID, and a string. And so you can see here is that first our get just returns the random affirmation. Our get category name returns one of the following categories. So if I were to do / happiness, right, we'd go ahead and return just happiness affirmations, right? And so we're kind of limiting the possible affirmations that we can see. Then we also have get favorites by user ID and get custom by user ID. So in order to do that, we would use users and then their user's ID, which we've just hard coded so far, and then favorite. So what you can see here is we'll get a list of their favorites, which I know for a fact that one of our users just has a couple favorites, and few of our users don't have any favorites at all. But we definitely will have to include some error checking and generally deal with some of these fun things that I think will be pretty exciting for us to look at. And then we've also got a custom feature implemented. So if we go to 1000 and then custom, right now we get one of these fun custom affirmations here. So, and if we go to 2000's custom, you'll see that we'll throw an error because there's no custom affirmation saved for that following user ID. Same if we type in a user ID that doesn't exist, like 4000, right? Oh, well, this one actually is accounted for. So I want to implement some error checking so let's go ahead and think about what we're going to build out this week or this string. We definitely want to implement error checking for empty, custom, and favorite. Right? So implement error checking for custom and favorite. And then we'll go ahead and also focus on definitely cleaning up our README a little bit here. And then I think I would like to transition a little bit into, and then I think I'd like to transition a little bit into potentially working with different user IDs. So we've got users 4000 custom right now spits out nothing, but users 2000 custom returns an error because the user exists, but they have no custom affirmations. So we'll go ahead and work on that. I think that'll be fun. But first, let's try and clean up this README a little bit. So initially what I noticed is that first off, we have this indentation here that I wanted to fix. And so I want to go ahead and make these nicely formatted. This needs to be number 4. So right there, we'll go ahead and work on some of these tabs a little bit. Create some of the spacing in here. And then also, last but certainly not least, I believe we also need to add these sections. So this will be actually, instead of these hashtag get random, we want to actually do get message. And then we want to do get message by category. So we'll remove this cheerful in here. So then we get random message, get random message by category. Then we'll say get random favorite message for user. And that'll be get favorite by, and then user ID. And then we'll also go ahead, and this will become number 3. Then finally, we'll also do another one here. That'll be number 4. And that'll be get random custom message for user category. And this will be get custom for user ID, which is what it looks like there. Response formats contributing looks good. So go ahead and give it a test to run and make sure that it looks the way that we want it to. I'll go ahead and commit this. And then I just will go ahead and usually, do it straight in GitHub because I find that helps a lot. And then, I forgot to change the number, but these other links work well. So that's good. Let's go ahead and fix up this super slow number here super quickly. And then response formats contributing category name, ID number, and string affirmation. So maybe we'll just return ID being number. With no quotes around it. Go ahead and update that. See what that looks like. No, it still does not like that. So maybe we'll do it in traditional means. So we'll just wrap it around quotes and put this in here as some form of number, right? When we do that in here, then we'll be able to commit these changes, update that, and there we go. Looks a lot better. So this is for our updated README, super quick changes, but we want to make sure things are accurate and look good. So then we have our releases for pre-release that we marked yesterday, our Python code here, and our Flask API. Then we'll also add in a section maybe that's as built with Flask hosted on Python anywhere. Perfect. So we'll just go ahead and pop that in right in here. And then, yeah, so for those of you who are looking to follow along, got all of these 10 different things right straight here on the GitHub, which is obviously very helpful. And then we've got our pythonanywhere.com, which currently just spits out a random affirmation if we click on it, and also adheres to those. So I'll actually go ahead and stop sharing my screen for a second so I can log into Python Anywhere and then show y'all what that looks like from the other end. And then double checking. Sorry, I have a missed call from someone. I have no idea why. Sorry, y'all. Random things here and there. Yep. Awesome. Okay. So let me go ahead and reload the page super quickly, and I'll show you what this looks like from this end. So we've got our Python Anywhere deployment, which I've just go ahead and created a free account here, which is why it's also under my name, and pythonanywhere.com, which is perfectly fine. Then we have our source code and our working directory for my source code. Just go ahead and go to the directory. We have affirmations.py, which is the exact same file as we have over in our GitHub, our Flask app.py, which is the same file as we have over in our, and we have over in our, what's the word I'm looking for? Then we have over in our, in our GitHub. That's what I was thinking. I think that's what I was looking for. I don't know. But that's what I was thinking for. And then mock users, where we created our mock user database. And so this is what then ends up getting deployed over, right, when we go to dashboard and then look at our web tab. This is how we see the changes here. So we'll run it until 3 months for today, and then go ahead and kind of be able to see it. We force HTTPS because it's important. And then potentially can set up password protection with a username and a password. So there we go. That's a little bit about our API and kind of the progress that we've made so far. Let me go ahead and actually share the main application that the hope is we'll incorporate into our API here. And so I'll show y'all kind of the progress that we've made so far. So if I share my screen and open up Cheerify here. So this is Cheerify. This is an application that I worked on for Global Hack Weeks, January and February, which was really fun. And then what we have is sort of this, what we have is currently our API call, which makes a call straight to my script here and pulls a random affirmation. And so the goal is potentially to, within here, add in a way to see all affirmation categories, be able to look at specific affirmation categories as opposed to just specific ones. So what we could do, we'll kind of be able to potentially, if we have some extra time, walk through how I would do that. But this is what the app looks like so far, right? We have a way to add affirmations, but no way to save them yet, a way to favorite affirmations, but no way to persist that, a way to go to all of these different menus that we don't really have to decide what they do, and then also a way to refresh our affirmations, which actually works pretty well. So that's a good start. Let's go ahead and also walk through. I think the next thing I want to do, and I'll just give a quick checkbox on my cleaning up README point here. I think the next thing that I want to do is open up the code for our API here and work through some of these, work through some of the tasks that I had. But I think what I'm going to do first is take like a 5-minute break. I know we just started, but I think it'd be helpful for me to take a quick break. So I'll be back at 7. Let's do 7:25, or we'll do 7:25. So I'll be back in 5 minutes, give or take. And then, as always, if I'm gone and you have any questions in the chat, please just ask away. And I will see you all in just a couple minutes. I'm gonna go get some water. A little thirsty. All right. Awesome. And just like that, we're back. Super quick. All right, let's see. Okay, so these are files that we don't need to worry about quite in our gitignore, or not in our gitignore here, in our PyCache. We won't necessarily push. You know what we could do also? Probably add a good gitignore. Let's try and add a gitignore up here. So I'll go ahead and potentially, how do I add a... Okay, cool. Let's do some common gitignore configurations. Let's do a Python gitignore. Cool. Perfect, got it. Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and do this on the website super quick because I'm going to have to pull down my changes anyway. Oh, and I can also get rid of the banner. And put back our repo. So we'll go ahead and share my screen real quick. Open up this window. And just in here, go ahead and create a file. .gitignore. And then, oh, perfect. I'll just use Python as my template. Awesome. Sweet. So we've got a good Python template. We'll go ahead and commit that. And just like that, we're done. And then let's also go ahead and present the screen for now. Go ahead and go back here. And now we'll go ahead and do a quick git pull. Make sure everything looks good. Perfect. We've added a gitignore. We can go ahead and start these changes just to leave it for now. We don't really need to worry about our PyCache or anything like that. Although, just a check. Should our PyCache be? Yes. So we should not even worry about this file at all. So we'll go ahead and delete it as well. Or actually, is that how that works? Wait, should I delete that file? I think it just doesn't get committed, which is fine. So yeah, we think we should be fine to delete it. Changes. Yep. And then do a quick, you're just looking at my face. Git pull. Great question, actually. So we've got a question in the chat here. At what point is a gitignore necessary? I would say, general, good practices as any good engineer. If you're ever working with version control, you should ideally set up a gitignore. It is a pretty quick process, and it can save you a lot of headache and a lot of issues and a lot of other problems along the way. It can help you avoid things that are particularly bad or particularly dangerous, like, for example, publishing a public API key or a private API key over on your GitHub repository. You can set up a gitignore file to also include any of your files. I would say it's actually, funnily enough, the less familiar you are with the language that you're using, the more likely it is that you're going to want to use a gitignore, just because you might not be familiar with what files you should versus shouldn't be pushing. So, for example, I shouldn't be pushing PyCache, or I shouldn't be pushing Vend, or I should be pushing some other file, right? Where it's here, it's pretty clear that it's telling me, okay, yeah, don't push any of the env and Vend. Don't push any Spider projects. Don't push any mkdocs documentation. Don't push any of these. And so they're just kind of telling you to not push any of the files that it takes to actually compile things, right? Which is especially important for a language like Python, or potentially a language that has a lot of different build aspects and other weird things in it that you might need to deal with. So I would say that is a great question. Absolutely. So I would say, yeah, honestly, it's because it's so quick to do and can save you so much time. You should always have a gitignore, unless you are really, really familiar with things and you feel like you can handle it without one. That being said, you should always have one. It takes, Would pushing environmental information be harmful or merely inconvenient? It depends on what type of environmental information it is, right? If it's a private API key, it's harmful, right? Because then someone can use your API key and access information that is unique to you. So for example, if we're using an API key to access our database, right? A bad actor could use that to do lots of different fun things with it. Like for example, if each user authenticated and got an API key when they first signed up for our website, what that would then mean is that if a bad actor managed to get access to our API key, then they were able to log in as us and make API calls as us, which is really bad. Whether it's because they're going to flood the server with requests or whether because they're going to have access to our personal information, either of those is pretty bad. For pushing like environment information or cache or anything like that, the main really bad thing about it is just like file size and bloat. So these are files that are, specific to your machine, specific to your computer, specific to your specifications and your downloads. Because you're going to need to run the file on every other computer anyway, there's really not a huge benefit. Or also like it's going to just bloat up this repository, which is, in a small project, that's probably fine if it's a couple of files, right? I mean, our PyCache would have like 2-3 files maybe, right? And then that would be pretty much it. Whereas, like if, and I'm sure if we rerun our file now, or if we rerun our project, you'll see that, yeah, our cache got regenerated, right? So these are just like these cache files, but they're unique to my machine. They're unique to my specifications. There's really no need for anyone else to look at them. Not to mention that when they run the project on their computer, like running Flask run and all that, it'll just go straight to our, it will just override those files straight anyway. And it could actually cause it that, like, if for some reason the file can't be overridden or something is stuck somewhere along the way, it might complicate things in that regard too, which is not something that we really want. So, good question. Could be definitely inconvenient, definitely harmful, potentially both. Is API information stored in Venn? In this case, as an API keys. What you would normally do is not necessarily store it in Venn. That being said, what I would sometimes do is I would create in this gitignore a gitignore for like my keys.file or like my keys.py file. So just to kind of show you what I mean by that is if I decided that I wanted to add in an API key file, I'll add in my API keys section, right? And I would do essentially that.key, and I would add in a new file and call it, cheerify.key, right? And then that way, what we're seeing here is that I've added this cheerify.key file, and it's not included in my commit history up here. Because despite this being a file that normally would be recognized, like if I change this, right, and I rename it to cheerify.py, you'll see that it shows up as a file we should be adding to our version control. Whereas if it's a cheerify.key file, then it doesn't show up as a file that should be included in version control. So this just allows for you to kind of not push that. I personally, you can kind of store your API keys wherever you want. I just usually put them in the root directory in like a .key or like .whatever folder for that specific language, and then definitely make sure to include it in the gitignore. So like, for example, let's say I renamed this folder to be our cheerify.py, right? And then I want it to, now you can see that because cheerify.key is not included in our gitignore, we now have cheerify.py instead, this gets added to this, right? And so what would happen is, like, say I have blah, blah, blah as my key, right? It is now included in this portion here, right? If I just kind of did what I tend to do, which is like, hey, add all my changes, right? And then commit and then push, I would accidentally push my API key, which would be very bad. All right, friends, so sorry, but someone is calling me. So I'm pretty sure I know what this is and that it's kind of important. So I will be right back. Sorry about that, friends. Welcome back. But as I was saying, like this way we would push our API key, which would be bad. So generally, you know, I think this is a good thing for us to do. So let's go ahead and just delete this file because we won't need it. So not my emoji keyboard. Sorry, I accidentally opened that. Let me delete this file so that it's not needed. And then in our git ignore, we're also going to get rid of this section here quickly because that's something that we need to worry about right now. And so right now we have no changes from our previously, which makes sense. And what you can see also in VS Code, which I really not like, is graying out files that are going to be ignored by our git ignore. So I really, really appreciate that because I feel like it makes it a lot easier to see what files are getting pushed out versus what files aren't. And so it's a pretty quick visual cue for you to see these things, which is really helpful. Awesome. Let's go ahead and try and work through our error checks for custom affirmations here. So we have a check for if user is none, and then I want to return, I think, if custom is none. Then the goal will be to return user does not have custom affirmations and a 404. And then we'll also go ahead and I wonder then if I can get rid of this part. This works. So I'm going to try and remove this to clean up our code a little bit. Here, I think that makes sense. We've got our user does not exist, user does not exist, user does not have favorites, and user does not have customs, which I think makes sense. And then all of our different categories in here. And then so what we could do now is try and run this, and I'll go ahead and go to the deployment here. And so share my web browser now. I'm going to set that up super quickly. Perfect. Okay, so we're here and this part works fine, so that's good. Let's try and do users and then one. Nope, not that. I just want users one. Perfect, so we get users does not exist and then user one custom. We should still get user does not exist. Let's try users 1000 custom. We should get our I'm an awesome engineer. What about 1001? Then we should get user does not exist. What about 2000 custom? Okay, we're still getting our internal server error here. So maybe let's see if we can within this say, that's interesting actually. Favorite is random dot choice from user favorites. So let's maybe try and add in some some print statements here. Let's say favorites. And then within here, I also want to add a print statement that says custom. Oh, perfect. Cannot choose from an empty sequence is the error we're getting. So let's, sorry. I transitioned over to VS Code and then it reran and then it hit me in the face with like the bright white. So let's see. App.py here. Just to show y'all what I'm looking at, I'm going to go ahead and increase the font size here a little bit. Perfect. So, and also increase this portion and then just look at this. So we are getting here in random choice user custom. So user custom cannot choose from an empty sequence. So we'll have to adapt some error checking earlier instead. So customs and favorites are initialized to be an empty sequence to start. So potentially let's add in, so instead of adding this in with random.choice up here, what we'll need is we'll need to move it down. So we'll say if user, potentially the length of user favorites is 0, then we can do return the JSONify error does not have favorite affirmations. Then we'll do favorites, and then we'll be able to remove this part instead. And then finally JSONify favorites. So let's replace that instead. And we'll do this up here as well. So if length user custom is 0, return that. Perfect. And let's go ahead and open up our terminal window again, right? And then that and rerun the Flask environment, open it up, show you all that. So we've got this open, share my screen, window, perfect. So we've got this locally hosted right now, right? So we can do refresh through, we know this part works, right? We'll add in users, 1,000 custom, that has worked fine. Let's try users 2,000 custom. 3,000 works too. Okay, so now it's saying user doesn't have custom affirmations. And then I believe we do 3,000 favorite. We do the same thing. 2,000 favorite should return. So something here is not right. And actually, I know exactly what it is. It's because we removed the code because customs does not function exactly how this one does. So we need it to be, actually, so this will be random choice love. Okay, and then it will be, it'll actually be so this will be our favorite num, and then this will be for our favorite. It'll actually be, and I gotta share my other screen again. Share screen, window, app.py, perfect. So then we have favorite affirmation for affirmation. In affirmations, if, let's see, what does come out? If a favorite ID is, if affirmation ID is favorite num. And then the first known value of that, I think, makes sense. And then we return the JSON-ified value of favorite. Let's go ahead and try and run this in terminal. All right, so we'll go ahead and close out of this part instead again. So Control-C that. Start this part over, rerun our Flask environment. Stop my share screen here. Open up this new link, put it over on this side. Perfect. Let's see here. I had to place a GitHub, not a GitHub order. I had to place a Target order for one of my student orgs, and it took a little bit. They finally picked it up, which is good. Great, awesome. So I am here in our 4999. Perfect. So now I want to go to users 1000 custom. Perfect. What about users 1000 favorite? Should spit out all of these. Perfect. So it spits out these. Now I like this, and I think I'm going to push up what we've made so far. But what I would like to, I think, do is implement some form of looking at the previous affirmation we called. So we don't get the same affirmation back to back to back. I think that'd be a nice thing to implement. But you know what I'm going to do first? I'm going to go turn on my lights. Be right back. Perfect. I feel like I can't sit still during this live stream for some reason, but that's okay. So yeah, so we'll get the user ID. Maybe we'll do, yeah. We'll go ahead and take a look at this. And I definitely want to push up what we have so far. And then actually also get it updated on our Python Anywhere environment. So we'll do added error checking for empty, custom, and favorites. Right, so then we get to do this, commit and push. Go ahead and stage that. Perfect. Upload that and should be up on GitHub. Let's see here. Perfect. Yep, it's right there. So now I can go ahead and share my screen. And you can see here, we just updated the change. Hello, hello. Just updated the change here. It says app.py and then added error checking for empty, custom, and favorites. Awesome. And then for setting it up, we'll go ahead and go to our source code here, go to our directory. We don't need to change affirmation or mock users. We'll just go ahead and take our app.py and hop it on over to our deployment here. So we'll rerun this part and then run through this. Hit save, hit run. Make sure everything loads. Everything looks good. Perfect. Hit refresh here. Should be good. Give it a second to refresh just in case. Go back home, go to my dashboard, open the web tab, and reload it up here as well. This is just to make sure that our changes have actually propagated to the URL that we're using. Because right now, all that we effectively did was say, hey, we have it up on, what was it? We have it up on localhost, like you can download the code and run the API yourself. But we want to actually make sure that we can use this here. So now when we should be able to call users 3000 customs, we should get an error here. User 3000 favorites should also give us an error. Favorites. Perfect. Oh. It's favorite, not favorites. There we go. Cool. So just like that, I think we've got a decent amount of progress for our first section here. So let's think about what I kind of want to do next. I think it might be helpful to potentially walk through, and I'm going to write out some ideas here and think through some ideas, and I think we'll take a quick break and then come on back and see if we're ready. So we've got our, my goodness, so many things all at once happening. Well, okay, so let's see here. We've got 4 things that I wanted to do. I wanted to clean up the README. We did that. I want to implement error checking for custom and favorite. I did that. Then I think what I would like to do is potentially slowly work on post for creating a new user. And then for another post to save a custom affirmation. And then another post for saving a favorite affirmation. And then potentially, I think we've got some time. What we could do as well is, okay. What we could also do is work on setting up an API key. Setting up an API key requirement that I think would be helpful. And then let's think through what else we could accomplish here super quickly. Definitely want to incorporate how to add in API keys for like security purposes. And then I think it would be fun to talk about how to make changes in our iOS app to use Verify here. So I think that'll be pretty helpful. All right. So, you know what? I'm going to keep going for a bit because I'm feeling good. We will potentially revisit kind of grabbing a break later. So I would like to make app route. And I would like to say, how do I format a post request? I've never made a post request in Flask, so we'll learn something new together. So post requests in Flask. So we could create form/users, and then potentially like an int, which is ID, or potentially users, new, and then int ID, just like that, with the method being of type post. Go ahead and post right there. Awesome. And then we'll say definition create user, right? So users get users ID. Am I sharing my screen? I'm not sharing my screen. I hate when I do that. Share my screen. There we go. Perfect. So what I was thinking is create a, like when we call users new int ID methods post, create a user with the int ID, then append that to our user. We'd probably have to use some form of database here, right? Where we would ideally store, their ID, their favorites, their custom, and then also their name. And then potentially like a string, which is of type name, right? And then we would have ID is ID, name, which should be of type name. The name is not defined. And then name is of type R. Okay. So name is of type name, and then I need the single quote. Perfect. So we should be able to create our kind of return our message. You did successfully here when we make our post request, right? So if we were to run this again, right? If I go to terminal, run, Flask run here. Oh, I need to actually close out this. So Flask run, right? Open up our server here. And that's that 127. Perfect. Present my, share my screen here. Right, so we would create this where we would have our users 1000 custom, but in reality we would want to do now users new 1000, our users new 4000s, and I don't know, Kari, right? Okay, perfect. So this method is not allowed for the requested URL. Is a good thing to know. So get users new 4000 Kari returns a 405, which is interesting. Potentially, let's see, maybe instead of this being a string, this needs to be an str. Let's go ahead and try and rerun that to make sure it's not something. Let's leave that. Please let me exit my own program. Thank you. Oh, so you're not letting me. So can I try that now? Okay, so it works now. So it still does not let me. So method not allowed. This method is not allowed for the requested URL. Potentially try this, right? Let me try and shut it down, rerun it. We want this part. Still not it. So you're getting a 405 method not allowed. Okay. What if I changed it so that it was just users new 4000 with the method? Right? If I changed this and tried to rerun it and reran it back here, I tried to upload. Okay, so now it's not permitted. Users new, so it's still 405 method not allowed. It's very interesting. Interesting. Okay. Cool. Definitely some fun stuff to consider. Might be a little bit too challenging for now, but we did make no, we didn't make any changes that we haven't pushed up yet. Okay. Well, I think it'll be good practice for my brain to take a quick break. So we'll be back in right about 10-ish minutes. So right at 8:10 here. well, we'll dive right on back into programming. So I will see you all in just about 10 minutes. As always, if you need anything in the meantime, ask any questions in the chat and I'll get back to them right after. Excited for more work here. And just like that, we're back, friends. Hello, hello. All right, so I'm trying to think if we have enough time here to create post requests. I'm sure we do. So let's try and then input JSON. Yep, from user by ID. Nope, no, wrong thing, right? So we'll need to write a new one. So let's share my screen again. Share screen, window, post in here, app.py. Perfect. Okay. Oh, this is my working tree. I don't want to be working on this. I have my normal file. Perfect. Thank you. And let's see here. So we'll want to write a new app route. And then we'll do / users / new, and then int ID methods being post. Awesome. Then what we'll want to do is define create user. Right, so create user. Okay, def create user. And then, ID is of type int. Then we'll say potentially, this is just something that we had. So we'll have to make a post request. Okay, so what we do, I think, then is say, then what we would do is say res is request. Yeah, so we'll probably need an import requests. Right, then we'll say in here we'll add in, and then we'll add in new user will be a dictionary of ID. Yep. So favorites custom will be an empty array. Favorites will be an empty array. And then that's there. Perfect. Oh, can't close out. Perfect. And then ID will be, we'll probably write in a new ID, or potentially like a var or a next ID will be 4000, right? And then our new user will be ID next ID, right? And then so we'll say new user. So potentially it could be users new, and then maybe like a string of their name. Then we'll pass in where a name is of type str, and then users, we'll have to create a new user given name. So name will be nothing so far. So we'll set name to just be a blank string. Cool. So we'll say, okay, so then we'll say new user name is name, and then we'll say, actually, yeah, user's name is name. We won't need this user already exists section. We will append to users, new user. Then we'll say new user, we'll say next ID plus equals 1000. Then new user will become, new user's ID will become, then new user favorites will become blank. So will become blank. New user, or you know what? We'll just do that instead. Perfect. So new user will be reset once we've appended them, right? Because this is in users. Potentially what we could do is put this over in mock users, right? And then have it be called here. And then from mock users, import all. And then we would have our next ID here. Type int, awesome, all of that makes sense. Our user created successfully, except we would need to say then so then dictionary to send will be our new user. Then our res will be request.post. Now, what I'm trying to think through is how to actually split this up, because I'm not super familiar with post request writing. I've never written one before. Let's try and comment this out really quickly. And I'm taking a look at this nice helpful tutorial really quickly. So yeah, I think we'll want to keep users new, no slash, and the method post here. And we'll want to def create user. User, make a request.json. If the name not in user, return name was required. And then user at name is equal to so it would be request JSON. And then we'd probably just reset user. Along these lines, and then request would be need to define request. Interesting. Okay. I don't know if this is a valuable use of our time is the only thing. So I'm gonna leave both of these commented in and add in some quote unquote, yeah, this is the new user and user, yeah, it's kind of confusing. So comment this out, and then we'll add in a thing that says with adding user. Sync up our changes. Looks good. Perfect. I'm going to try and see. Data name. Yeah, we would probably write. We would have to probably call it with like Postman or something to test it out, which would make sense, but that might be a little rough for us to do, and I don't have Postman installed on this computer. Let me think through if there's anything else that we want to do. Like any other GET requests we want to create, or do we maybe want to move on to creating API keys? Okay, we could. Okay, so what we could do is kind of create. We're creating an API key. I think whenever a user would, let's see, how to set up API key for custom API Python. Let's try to think through this. No. Okay, this is for like creating API keys online. Interesting. Okay. So generating, would an API key be equivalent to the ID for the users in mockUsers.py? No, I mean, that would be probably, I mean, the way that we have it written right now, no, just because these are like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. You'd probably want these to be like unique user identifiers, if that. And even then, setting API keys to be user identifiers is not a good, very like secure practice, because then if someone managed to get into your data and somehow saw user IDs, then they would be able to authorize with API calls, which is kind of a really bad thing for you. So let me think about what I want to try and do here. Although, great question though, and I appreciate you asking that. I'm trying to think if there's a good way for me to do this. Best practices for building secure API keys. Yep. Interesting. Okay. Well, there's a lot of different options, but I don't know if we have necessarily, it's a good idea to try and implement one of them, because we're a little bit out of my depth here. And I'm kind of thinking if it might not make more sense to just try and focus on something else instead. Like, I don't know if I want to focus on this in particular. If that makes sense. I like my get and post requests here, right? These make sense for error handling and our README cleanup. I think those are a good thing for me to focus on, or were a good thing for us to focus on. I don't want to start something that I know is going to take, that I know would likely break our API if it took more than 30 minutes, or in reality, like closer to 25, because that's how much time we have right now. So let's try and think maybe of what we could build out here, right? So we currently just have get requests for users. In reality, what we would need is, for example, creating a new user, right? So we would need to create a post request. To create a new user, we need to create a post request to save a custom affirmation, post request to save a favorite affirmation, setting up the API key. Because then when a user would be created, they would receive their API key. And then the only way in which they would be able to authenticate is with their API key. So, like, let's think about how I would lay this out. I think what it might be a good use of our time is kind of talk through a more fully fledged application, and then kind of walk through the way that I would do that. So let's try and reset this. Share my screen. And then like kind of draw out almost an architecture. And think about some of these, right? So we would have, within this, we have we go back to our app from earlier, kind of looking at this. We have our initial part here, which is this is our view, right? So this is our view. So this is our, essentially, see how deep we want to get into this. We have our view, right? So our view is a good place to start. And then we have addition that our view will make contact with so this would be like a view model. And so this would be, we don't really have a view model as much because the application that we made is not super. Oh, are there any offline ready alternatives to Scala Draw that you would recommend? Honestly, a lot of times I'll just draw in my notes app or something along those lines, or like literally a piece of paper and a pen. I think like this stuff, you can't go wrong. Like I got this really cool dotted notebook at an event not too long ago, and I really enjoy using it for things like this where I'm sketching out things, just because I find it significantly easier to just like dotted journals have all the benefits of lines with none of the drawbacks, and all the benefits of grid without none of the drawbacks, right? Because you can kind of, and all the benefits of a blank page without all of the drawbacks. So like to me, is the best of all three of those worlds. So I think that would be my personal recommendation. Let me see. Sorry, friends. So many people need something from me. I don't know, as you know, I have always... Oh, how would you translate it from paper to a more professional format for slideshow presentation use? And then I would say, honestly, like, if you're going to use an online, like, I would say either an online resource or like something like a Google Drawings or an Scala Draw, something along those lines. Or if you really, really want, like, you know, you could try different variations on paper. I think like a paper drawing could look really professional if you, you know, used a ruler and just kind of kept things straight and even and all that. And that being said, I think that's personally what I would do. So we have our model and our controller here. Right now, there's not really much in terms of our view model. We do have a persistence controller. So trying to think through what I would want to do here. Kind of like, what is a good thing for me to focus on right now? Because I don't know if I can reasonably like sketch out an architecture for this. I mean, I could try. Like if I tried and wrote out, like we could even do it as like a, no, well thanks, Scala Draw. But what I was thinking is like a, you know, we leave one box here, right? Which is like kind of our, this box here. Well, that doesn't do much. This one. There you go, right? So something like this, where we get, in here we have our like client. So this is everything. So this, in this case, it is our, like if we were to build out little sub boxes in here, right? It's our iOS app and it's our Android app, right? Which we built out earlier. So something along these lines, right? Where we would sketch it out and then shrink this. Like that. There we go. I'm trying to shrink this down this way as well. I can't. Cool. That's fine. So like something like this. We have our iOS and Android app, which I can definitely color these in nicer. Go right. So iOS and our Android app, and then our client makes a request, right? So this would be an HTTP request where we then are linked to sort of our API, right? So that's kind of what we're hoping for right now, right? So we would have this potentially like this, right? With these. So this would be where our API would sort of live, right? So got this thing in here. Closing this down. Some of this in here, right? So we've got our HTTP request, which would then go over to our API. And also this is not very straight. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So right, we've got our client and then our API. And then we have within our API, we would have then we would send back instead, right? Go in this direction, a response, right? So, oh, that's not very helpful. Oh, I drew it the other way. That's fine. Oh, wait, so I could have just drawn it in this direction instead. Yep. Cool. Okay. Oh, sorry. Stretch this out in both of these directions. Perfect, right? And then we instead get an HTTP response. And then perfect, just like that. So an HTTP request and HTTP response. And then we have our REST APIs with our like kind of our API here, which has different different things that it can accomplish, right? So it can have like kind of getting all that information. And then ideally what we would do eventually, right, is connect this API up to some form of database. So we would have this, right? We'd have a database, which would then have, have our database, which would connect up probably like some form of double-sided arrow, right? So this would be kind of the way we would, I don't know why I made such a very aggressive arrow, but it's fine. So there we go. All right, so this is our database and our API, and these two would talk to each other back and forth, kind of sending over data. Let me double check something. We've got one of these, and then our HTTP request, our HTTP response, our API, our database, and then, so this would be where we would store things like our, here we would store things, if I make the little box, right? We would store things like username, and I'll make this font smaller, our username, our ID, and our favorites, and our custom. Yeah, I'll post them over on GitHub once we're done with the live stream, or once we're done with drawing these out. So yeah, we've got our username, ID, our favorite, and our custom. Right, so our favorite and our custom. And we'll do favorites and customs just to be consistent, right? So we've got our username, our ID, our favorites, and our customs. So this just is for like accomplishing the just give this one space. This needs to be down. That's fine. cool. Their username, our ID, our favorites, and our customs would be stored in our database, right? Where we have our mock user model. And then so we would have a couple of different sample workflows, right? So let's think through maybe this first one. And that is like for the first time, we would have something like number 1. So this would be authentication or first time authentication, right? So what we would do is we would, in the client, right? Our client would make a call to our API here with an HTTP request. Then our API would make another call here to our database. And then, so this would be potentially even, so that would be to like determine, so it would be even to like retrieve user data, right? And now that we don't have our data, we would need to go back here to our database and say create new user. So this would be probably a GET request or a POST. Yeah, so this would be a GET request for getting users info, right? Then this would be creating a new user that would then eventually return. We go back this way, right? Instead, what we would end up doing is then once we're done, go ahead and return the new user, right? And then for returning our new user, I won't be able to. That's fine. That's okay. Whatever. So we would create our new user and then a return new user, and then we would get our user info. And then from this, we would actually return user info, right? So in here, we would return user info. So that would be kind of our thing. So we could even change this arrow to be a 2-way. So along these lines, right? So we would get our user's info. If we aren't able to get our user's info, create a new user, return the new user, right? Whereas if it was a return authentication, right, which we could mark in, say, like something like orange, then we say login. Then instead it would be, we would be able to go in through here, right? Get our, so we'd be able to go in through here. I'm just gonna go ahead and boost these up a little bit. Yeah, so we'd be able to go in here, log in. We'd be able to get the user info, and then instead of creating and returning the new user, we just retrieve them from the database. So it'd almost be like we would be able to verify in the API how many times we actually have to call to the database. And the API would also allow us to make those calls where we don't necessarily need to access database information, right? For example, random affirmations, we don't really need access to the database, right? So if we were going to, instead of focusing on login, we're going to focus on a random affirmation, right? Then what we would do is simply grab the random affirmation from our API here, right? So go ahead and get random affirmation. And then return that information over to our client, and then our client will go ahead and display that information, right? So our API would have, different methods for doing different things. So that could be like, could be anything like serve our get and our post requests, as well as our put and our deletes, if we ever decided to do those. So get, post, put, or delete. would all be potentially helpful later on down the line. So yeah, I think let's go ahead and share this, export this, copy it, add a file, upload, or not upload, edit this, and then response format. We'll add in a small little section. Work in progress for the API and its connections to the Cheerify client and right, so anything like that. Go ahead and how would I embed images in GitHub Pages? Or actually in GitHub Readme, yes. Okay. Oh, I might just need a perfect, and then go ahead and paste this right in here. Awesome. What changes? Update, and there we go. No. Okay, so it does break. Non-image content type generator. Interesting. Let's see here. This link looks right. Okay. Apparently. We could also just, instead of doing that, we could do it the good old-fashioned way where I take a screenshot and then instead of doing that, I upload this. This is how I always upload any photos or things I need. So upload this, choose my files, desktop, there we go. Commit these changes. And then instead, what I could do is open this up, open the image in a new tab, get the copy of the image this way, and then in our code here, go ahead and, or in our repository here, replace that slug with this. Perfect. Except that I did the thing that I always don't like doing, which is absolutely, yep. Nope. So commit these, update these, and now it should show the diagram. Perfect. Awesome. So diagram is all uploaded as per your request. And then let me go ahead and check on a couple of things. We might wrap up a couple of minutes early if I'm the... Nah, okay. There isn't a stream right after mine. So we've got some time still, which is good. Let's go ahead and potentially walk through, let's see, what would be another helpful thing for us to talk about? I think we talked about authentication and creating APIs with API keys. Like for what we would want to do is we would want to find some way to have a user generate an API key like directly on the website. So you might want to like create a new method that would be like effectively when you created a user, it generated the user's random API key and outputs, you know, hey, this is your API key, please store it. You won't be able to access it otherwise. It expires in however many days. What you could also do is kind of use that to connect with your database, right? So if we had our API key, we would, or based on, you know, a successful login or log out from our database, we would return an API key, and then that API key would then be required for us to actually make a call to our API, right? Based on an successful authentication from our database. Let's see what else we have that might be helpful to talk about. We could take a look at Cheerify potentially and show a few things I had on there. These are slides. Perfect. So in Cheerify initially, where we're using like a local data store called Core Data to try and store our affirmations, and then loading them with a persistence container, it might instead be more helpful to kind of use some form of online database where we could then kind of almost bypass the API call and kind of create a modified data structure or modified architecture. My bad. Hold on. I made the window funny size. There we go. That's better. Where we could create kind of an alternate architecture where we would, my goodness, where we would bypass the API unless we're making a public API call, in which case we wouldn't need like any API key or anything, or even just like for secure. Like there's a benefit to doing it the way that this is currently done right now, where it's like everything is secure and encrypted on device, right? Whereas like encrypted on device, stored on device, not associated with any like online resources. And then you don't really even save custom or favorite affirmations or users or anything into the API here. Like what that would accomplish is really effectively just make a public facing API in which we pull down lots of different affirmations. So I think that would be really helpful potentially for things to do. And would also allow for us to, be able to get all of these fun little requests. Awesome. Okay. We're just at about time. We've got a little bit more left. Not too long. But I wanted to probably take a couple of minutes here to answer any questions that are in the chat or kind of talk to everyone as they're here. I wanted to also thank you for watching. And, kind of leave myself open for any questions for the next couple of minutes. If there is no questions, then we'll just go ahead and end it a little bit early. I think that will be perfectly okay. So yeah, we posted my diagrams, talked about offline ready alternatives for drawing out, translating things from paper, how to like set up an API key, what API keys really are, sort of differences between them, why it's not a good idea to use them as user IDs, and lots of other really helpful things. So either way, I wanted to thank you all very much for joining me on my stream today. It's lovely to hang out with y'all, and I'm happy about the progress that we've made on Cheerify in the last couple of months. Oh my goodness, it literally just kicked me out of the stream. Well, I think that's my cue to the things cut out. That's probably making the head out for the evening, or probably the right call. Yes, thank you so much for joining and all of your insightful questions. Always appreciate it. On that note, I want to thank everyone for coming. It was lovely to hang out with you, and I will see you all in our next Global Hack Week, hopefully super soon. Alrighty, bye everybody.